Thank you, everyone, and thanks everyone for being here. I have to say, when we started the center in San Francisco, I never imagined that it would take us all the way to Washington, D.C. For this event with all of you. So I'm delighted to be here and so grateful to our sponsors and the many alumni of USF and those who are new and interested in USF to be here with us today. I have the great delight of introducing our keynote speaker today. Professor Tonya Evans is the founder and CEO of Advantage Evans Global Regulatory Strategies and a board member of the Digital Currency Group. She has testified before the U.S. House Financial Services Subcommittee on Digital Assets and previously served as the chairperson of the Maker Ecosystem Growth Foundation. And in that role, she led governance and regulatory strategy for one of DeFi's most significant protocols. Tonya advises central banks, security regulators, and financial institutions across the US, West Africa, and the Caribbean on digital asset policy and vast regulatory frameworks. A former tenured professor of law at Penn State Dickinson Law and associate dean for academic affairs, which is the hardest job in a law school, by the way, at UN, other than the dean, which is probably the hardest job of a law school, at the UNH Franklin Pierce School of Law. Tonya created one of the nation's first professional certificate programs in blockchain, cryptocurrency, and law. She is a Forbes contributor, author of Digital Money Demystified, and the host of Confidently Crypto on SiriusXM. And I have to say, when I got into the blockchain space, Tonya was one of the folks I turned to for help in understanding how it could be used for social good. So I'm delighted to introduce my friend of many years, Dr. Tonya Evans.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you. And I love that you filled this space so well. And it's a beautiful space. Whitney, it's an amazing space. I feel like I'm part classroom, part regulatory. So we've captured everything, and I appreciate you very much. Thank you to Dean Cobb, of course, Michelle Neitz, and K&L Gates, and Filecoin Foundation as well. It was one of the first projects I learned about when I first entered the space in 2017. The first time I heard about magic internet money was 2017. I didn't buy it. And I'm actually quite risk averse. No one will be able to tell given my remarks today, but I actually am a lawyer for a long time, and that's how we're trained. But I want to start with a number that actually comes from the State of Crypto report that I recently put out. I've been trying to put out the State of Crypto. It's an ongoing project since before 2024, was looking at the lead up to the elections and the involvement really for the first time in the industry and in changing the course of crypto regulation and legislation. And it's entitled Electing Crypto, and it's really looking at the impact before, then, now, and prospectively and perhaps normatively of moving forward. Every time I try to hit the button that I am done, what happens in the crypto space? You're not done. The SEC and CFTC are coming together and issuing joint reports and all sorts of things. But I did the best I could. It came out on the 13th, and anything after the 13th is not yet in it. Stay tuned. But again, I want to start with this number, $130 million. And that's how much the cryptocurrency industry spent on the 2024 elections. Nearly half of all corporate PAC spending, one industry, one cycle, and it worked. The super PAC fair shake went 48 for 58 in its targeted congressional races. The most pro-crypto Congress in history was seated. The most pro-crypto president in history signed the first stable coin law during Crypto Week, during the week of July 14th through the 18th. And Bitcoin is now a strategic reserve asset of the United States. And I want to share another number, 3.8%. These numbers will shape and guide the conversations that follow these remarks and in our small groups later as well. And that's the share of $116 trillion in U.S. household wealth held by African Americans. And according to the Federal Reserve, the typical white family has more than 6 times the wealth of the typical Black family and almost 5 times the wealth of the typical Hispanic family. In fact, the median Latino household sits at roughly 61,000 in net worth. The median Black household sits at about 24,000. The median white household at 188,000. But here's the paradox. The communities on the short end of that wealth gap are communities most actively adopting crypto over indexing. Black Americans own crypto at approximately twice the rate of white Americans, 23% compared to just 11. Hispanic and Asian American Democrats outpace white Democrats in crypto purchases. We don't see this in the headlines, but we see it in a number of the reports that have come out, certainly in 2024 and 2025. There was a paradigm poll in 2024 that found that 22% of Black Democrats, 25% of Hispanic Democrats, and 27% of AAPI Democrats had bought cryptocurrency. And it's not the archetype of the tech or crypto bro, the bro culture, right? These are not the kind of FUD or fear, uncertainty, and doubt filled headlines that would suggest these are the teachers, these are the gig workers, these are the first generation entrepreneurs building in the space, irrespective of actual investment. These are people looking for a way around the financial system that has never traditionally worked for them. And then there's the gender gap. Men outnumber women roughly 2 to 1 in crypto ownership. Young men aged 18 to 49 own crypto at a rate of 25%. Young women in the same age range, just 8%. The industry's culture, its marketing, its interfaces, its governance structures, as we will talk about this afternoon, have been built overwhelmingly by and for one demographic. And yet there are demographics like Black women, the fastest growing group of entrepreneurs in America, many like me, building crypto native businesses despite being largely invisible in the industry's own narrative about who it serves. But these communities were aggressively marketed to during the last bull run and certainly leading up to the election cycle. Celebrity endorsements. I think we all remember the Clubhouse rooms. Is Clubhouse still a thing? I don't know. I kept that in though. Facebook groups. Is that still a thing? I don't want to. The promise of financial freedom. Even I participated in those conversations as well. And also this idea of closing the wealth gap that I mentioned earlier. And then $2 trillion in value evaporated in 2022. FTX collapsed. Celsius went bankrupt. Its customers alone lost $5 billion. The people who could least afford losses were the ones most aggressively marketed to, but also the least protected. So here's the question the summit is really asking, even if it is perhaps framed far more politely in the program, then I will continue. When we say emerging technology for social good, the challenge is, do we mean it? Or is social good the branding we put on the press release while the architecture gets built for people who were already at the table? And that's not a rhetorical question. It's the question I've been working on for the last 2 decades, even outside of the crypto space, in boardrooms, in classrooms, in the halls of Congress, the regulatory bodies on 3 continents now. And then I published the report that I've mentioned in just the last week. You can get that at proftonyaevans.com. I neglected to mention that earlier. Just go to the homepage and there's a download. But everything I'm about to share with you is really grounded in that research. And the grounding moves us to where we are now and sets us up for our conversation. So we're clearly living through the most consequential period in the history of the United States for digital asset policy. And for the first time, the country has a coherent, affirmative federal crypto policy. We have the Genius Act, again, signed into law July 18th, 2025, the first federal stablecoin framework in American history. And we have 9 days ago, on March 11th, this did make it into my report. The SEC and CFTC signed a formal memorandum of understanding establishing Bitcoin and Ethereum as digital commodities under CFTC oversight. A long-awaited discernment between the two agencies, one that clearly focuses on securities, the other commodities. But we now have this bright line indication of policy guidance and the intent of the respective agencies. And just 2 days after that, the Senate passed a statutory ban on a federal retail digital dollar or central bank digital currency by a vote of 89 to 10. And I've always said this, the nature of politics is anytime you are allocating rights and resources, by its very definition, that's politics. But it need not be partisan. And there's been a lot of interesting movement in that direction. We certainly saw it with stablecoin legislation and to a certain extent with the Clarity Act for market structure as well. But again, I come back to the number of 130 million on the 2024 election cycle. Again, nearly half of all corporate PAC spending. And I want to be precise about something because we have lawyers and regulators and policymakers. You're going to appreciate the nuance that we'll be exploring today. I'm not telling you that political engagement is wrong. I've spent time doing fly-ins on the Hill. Again, rights, resources, political. But I identified something in my research that I call the crypto voter paradox, and it goes a little something like this. The communities most likely to own and use cryptocurrency were also the communities most likely to be harmed by the broader policy agenda of the candidates the crypto industry chose to back. A July 2024 paradigm poll again found some of the statistics mentioned earlier, and those communities were not a fringe constituency. They really were the political foundation on which the industry's money spending strategy rested. And yet the industry's political spending focused almost exclusively and to some extent necessarily on crypto-friendly regulatory outcomes. It's a long stretch in time before reaching that. But I argue and I commend to you that financially inclusive values that gave crypto its most moral authority somehow lost in the conversation. And I challenge us as we continue to move forward, not only in the crypto space, but in the broader sense of artificial intelligence and all new technologies that operate on where we are today and how they're changing in the future. That's where the social good question becomes unavoidable. And so we're back where we started in terms of the impact that technologies will have, not just on a limited few, but on the social good of it all beyond. Now, I don't want to set this up as just despair or rattling off statistics, because the fact that we are in this room, the fact that Michelle Neitz is doing the work that she's doing, the fact that Filecoin Foundation has focused from the beginning on the very conversations we're having, the fact that K&L Gates thought it so important to open up their home for us to come in. And so where do we go from here? And I want to tell you a story from about 11-ish days ago, because now I'm doing quite a bit of work, as you heard, in West Africa generally. I served as an outside reviewer for the Central Bank of Nigeria, and I continue to do work with Ghana, both the Bank of Ghana, their SEC, et cetera. So that's kind of the backdrop of what I'm about to share. So Ghana celebrated 69 years of independence on March 6th, 69 years. 3 days later, blockchain.com was one of the world's largest crypto platforms, announced it was launching operations in Ghana and inviting Ghanaian customers to submit identity verification documents to trade in Ghana cities, the local currency. Here's what matters about the timing. Last December, Ghana's parliament passed the Virtual Asset Service Providers legislation, or VASP legislation. On February 20th, the Bank of Ghana, the SEC of Ghana, issued a joint directive requiring all VASPs to obtain explicit prior authorization before engaging in public marketing to Ghanaian consumers. And on the very same day that blockchain.com launched its campaign, March 9th, the SEC in Ghana published its final regulatory sandbox licensing guidelines. I wrote about it in Forbes. Within 24 hours, the Chamber of Digital Assets there issued a formal public statement. It became a thing. Really this doesn't have as much to do with blockchain.com. I don't know them. This is not a cautionary tale about them specifically, but just about the timing and the speed, the rapidity with which legislation and regulation can move in an ever-evolving technological world. And thinking about why this matters here and the connection to Washington. This is a real-time example of what functioning infrastructure looks like. It's messy. Sometimes my Nana used to say messy marvelousness. It depends on what side of the proverbial and actual coin you're on to decide whether mess is marvelous. But this isn't a pilot project. These are countries that perhaps may be smaller and therefore more nimble when you have fewer members of the alphabet soup, as it were, on the legislative side and also on the regulatory side. But also, Ghana is a country that decided it would hold the pen on its own digital future and not kind of wait for it to bubble up to the surface. We find ourselves here in the United States at about that moment as well. And that brings me to the standard that I apply to every regulatory framework that I evaluate. And there are three principles. Principle one, governance must be inclusive by design, not as an afterthought. When I chaired the board of the Maker Ecosystem Growth Foundation in 2020 and 2021, we were governing one of the most significant decentralized finance protocols in the world. And the governance question was everything. Who votes? Whose voice is amplified? How do you build structures that are genuinely participatory? And if you design the governance after you build the technology, you have already locked in the biases. The communities being served need to be at the design table, not invited to comment after the product ships, and certainly not after the fact to help sell it or use it. Councilmember Bartlett's work in Berkeley, AJ Proton's work at Project Own, both sit at this intersection, and I'm looking forward to hearing how they navigate it. Very important. Principle two, regulatory clarity enables innovation. I served on the Bermuda Global FinTech Advisory Board back in 2019 to 2022. And I watched this small but mighty nation build a clear framework and attract serious companies because those companies knew the rules. May not be the most favorable, but at least from a lawyer's perspective, we have a bright line rule, one that you can choose to build around or not. Ghana just did the same thing, opened up sandboxes, both run by the SEC and their central bank as well. Here in the United States, the Genius Act's dual federal state pathway, which allows smaller stablecoin issuers to, I think that's under $10 billion in market cap, to be regulated at the state level. And I think this is a reasonable and very meaningful accommodation for innovation stage companies that might actually serve underbanked communities. The market structure bill's treatment of what are called ancillary assets, the tokens that sit between pure commodities and pure securities, will be a more consequential test. Community-based blockchain projects, cooperative ownership models, the CDFI adjacent use cases all depend on a framework that does not inadvertently classify participatory governance tokens as unregistered securities. A framework that gives institutional participants clarity while leaving community-oriented use cases in legal limbo just replicates in the digital space, the very exclusions crypto was built to transcend. One of the first blockchain cryptocurrency and law certificate programs that I created, you heard about that earlier from Professor Neitz. Over 100 students signed up before we even launched. It was interesting to see how focused, and this was offered outside of the law school. There were people who could come in specifically for that certificate, although our law students participated as well. And it was always interesting in the beginning to convince students. And now I'm teaching virtually at 2 law schools. I retired and then promptly said, yes, I will continue to teach without all the bells and whistles. But I'm teaching now in an experiential fashion. And back in the day, business owners seemed to get it. Students there were a few strong and mighty ones. Now there are 31 students at Dickinson Law, 19, and they were all both oversubscribed at Oklahoma Law. And when you think about the commitment and the interest that continues to develop over time, it's really, really important that not only our law students and business students, but those who are already past their JDs continue to focus on technological competence. Technological competence to practice law means technological competence. And when you look in the comments section as well, it goes on to say, basically, TLDR, like not just to turn on a computer, but to see how technology is changing the way we educate and the way we practice. We focus in the class on hot topics. They are, everyone knows that law students like to compete. I think it's like a special little subset of people that we are. So we are engaged in Satoshi madness right now. And we have brackets. It's a thing. There's a lot going on in Evan's class. And they are taking it very seriously, I must say. But what I love so much is these students are engaging in the most complex questions. Some of the things that we're raising today, likely without an answer, but the fact that we're engaging in it is going to be truly, truly important. They focus on governance. They focus on crypto native businesses. They focus on different vantage points, because the law, the technology is actually the easy part at this point. What we say about it, how we interact with it, the policy decisions that drive the use that would be accepted versus not, critically important. And those are the conversations we need to continue to press within technological bubbles, but more importantly, outside of it, when people don't speak the same language, but know the real live impact. That's what makes my work in Ghana so important. They've built out of necessity on top of a mobile money structure that now is ready for cryptocurrency. And so 3 questions that I want you to carry into the panel and the small group discussions is first about the Genius Act's implementation, that regulations are being drafted right now. The Treasury, banking agencies have 18 months from enactment to finalize the rules. And so that's why you're also seeing a dramatic uptick in the energy on the Hill and in agencies to try and make sense of this. The rulemaking process, I also in my former life taught administrative law. It was interesting. My package was IP, crypto, entertainment, administrative law, and I spent 10 years teaching property. I had no idea that all of those things would merge into one. But they absolutely have, and it's been quite fascinating to see how the proverbial sausage is made with respect to agencies. But the rulemaking process is open to comment. Consider participating. Are the advocates, the community organizations, the legal aid professionals in this room engaging in that process? And are they sufficiently prepared to be helpful? Perhaps that is also the calling as well, because certainly institutional players are, and we focus our time and attention now on the social good aspect of that, and if every voice is adequately prepared and engaged in order to move forward. Second, to focus on Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent proposed 4 technological pillars for crypto compliance, just about a little under 2 weeks ago. AI transaction monitoring, digital identity systems, one of my favorite use cases, blockchain analytics and forensics, and interoperable data sharing APIs. So the communities I've been talking about today have the most to lose if that architecture skews towards surveillance over access. Who is at the table ensuring that it does not? Third and finally, who shows up for the people who have already been harmed? The $2 trillion that evaporated from the crypto market in 2022, the Celsius bankruptcy that cost customers $5 billion, the aggressive marketing to disenfranchised communities without adequate risk disclosure, the harm hasn't been repaired. What does that repair look like as we start to think about how we prevent the next cycle, or at least are ready to confront it head on? So I'll close where I began. I've been in a lot of rooms over the course of my career at the intersection of law and technology and empowerment, the legislative hearing rooms, the boardrooms, the regulatory convenings. And the single most consistent observation I have is this: the quality of the outcome depends on who is in the room. This room has law students who are going to write the next generation of technology policy, government officials implementing these frameworks in real time, nonprofit leaders on the front lines, corporate leaders building the tools, foundation leaders funding the research. The regulatory window is absolutely open, but I think we all know how this goes. It won't stay open forever, is the TLDR for that. And the question is not whether the technology works, as we said. The technology works, and technology will technology. It will continue to evolve over time, whether rules, laws, norms are in place or not. The question is whether the people in the room like this, the ones that demand that we have a multiplicity of folks from various backgrounds and experiences coming to the table to wrestle with the questions together. Definitely go and get the State of Crypto 2026 report. I want you to take it, use it, share it. Because as I was reflecting on this again this morning, the 130 million built a pro-crypto regulatory environment, to be sure. But it is yet to make a comparable investment in the P in peer-to-peer. And that part is still being written. The next time someone in a boardroom or a hearing room or a legislative markup asks, who is this framework for? And if you've been in those rooms, the question is constantly coming up. Interesting technology, but who's this really for? And by for, I mean my constituents. Otherwise, I may not be as present for the conversation. But make sure you're in the room to answer the question. Make sure that you have a voice for those who seek not only to benefit, but to be harmed, but for your presence and your participation and your advocacy. If you aren't, if I'm not, if we aren't, someone else absolutely will answer the question. We just might not like the answer. So keep going, keep growing, and let's keep advocating. Thank you.